Recently in the news, depending on when this video goes up, there have been a number of mass shootings going on in America. Granted, this is really nothing new. It's an unfortunate part of the culture we live in. Being made worse by the bleeding hearts thinking the guns themselves are the problems, not the fact the shooters themselves either had deep mental issues or emotional issues that were never dealt with. Or worse, were violent psychopaths who were known to authorities and the FBI who did nothing because them going postal was more useful to deep state's narrative. Deep breath, Koopa. Calm down. This is not going to be a discussion on gun control, by the way. I'll sum that issue up by saying that it's stupid and it kills more people than it saves.
Only 5 words for you.
From my cold, dead hands.
No, what I'm here to talk about is the other thing that gets blamed. Some of the right is quick to scapegoat as the cause of these shootings, ironically parroting with the left as well on the issue. We're going to talk about video games. And how they're not the root of all society's ills. Yeah, I know, much smarter people with far bigger budgets have already said everything I'm gonna be saying. Heck, it was even an episode of Penn and Teller's bullshit back in the day. But because no one ever seems to listen, why not throw my hat in the ring and add my 2 cents? This horse ain't getting any deader. So this all started back in 1999. Well, no, actually school shootings have been going on for literal decades. Centuries even. One of the most notorious and deadly shooting being a school shooting in Austin, Texas in 1966, before even the invention of Pong. And then there's the Bath, Michigan massacre, which is unique for a few reasons. One, that there was no gun involved, the killings were carried out with a bomb and a knife. 2, the immense body count of 45 people, mostly children. And 3, the fact that it occurred in 1926, before even the television. This isn't even a thing that's unique to America. All over the world, throughout history, there's always been school shootings. Any country, on any continent, in any point in history, there's always been some sick son of a bitch who is willing to kill children for attention. But I feel like I'm laboring the point. So in 1999, the Columbine shooting occurred, leaving 13 dead, plus the 2 perpetrators, who we don't count because criminal lives don't matter, and many more injured. It was carried out by the 2 students of the school, who were known to authorities and to the school for other, albeit minor, incidents. They somehow slipped through the system, and as a result, and of the bullying they received from their peers, this tragedy occurred. Now that would have been the beginning and the end of it in an honest media, but this was 1999 when the 24-hour news cycles of CNN, MSNBC, and Fox were beginning to come into prominence. As such, their names and faces were on the news, non-stop, 24 hours a day. Every aspect of their lives was dissected, from the movies they watched, to the hobbies they were interested, to, yes, the games they played. Basically everything except for them being borderline mental cases that the school neglected to acknowledge. This led to a huge controversy, not on the state of mental health or education, but on violence in video games, and bullying and gun control and so on. Public figures and politicians who either saw this as an opportunity to grift or were already beating the drum as it was, jumped onto the bodies of the victims and grandstanded about how video games were the great Satan destroying the moral foundation of this once great nation.
Satan takes it quite seriously. Your children need to know there's a devil and he hates them and he wants to ruin their life.
Figures such as Jack Thompson, but also First Lady Hillary Clinton, Second Lady Tipper Gore, and Senator Joe Lieberman. This wasn't the only time such a moral panic occurred. Every time there was a mass shooting where video games were even remotely involved, they got blamed. And it was usually the same figures standing up on the piled corpses, beating the same drum. There was a pushback. The games press was not going to take this sitting down, so there was an active debate against, well, just Jack Thompson. You see, the games media didn't like admitting that the anti-video game thing was mostly a Democrat-led issue, and many of them leaned left. This is a whole topic worth a video of its own, and don't worry, it's coming. For now, I'll just say Jack Thompson was pretty much pushed back against, and only Jack Thompson. Even to the point where it caused him to go mad and start blaming unrelated cases on games and music, and he eventually got himself disbarred. And as time went on, shootings continued, and the press would continue to make heroes and martyrs in the sickest of senses out of the shooters. And video games became more and more mainstream. The debate just kept coming up. It wasn't the game journalists anymore, but the gamers who were pushing back against it, as many of the game journalists joined the ban violent video games side. After prominent leftist activists and feminists like Anita Sarkeesian started making claims that video games cause sexist behavior, them causing violent behavior was just the next logical step, and it was never gonna end there. Now today, the only thing keeping them from becoming the Jack Thompson figure they once mocked and derided is the fact that boomer Republicans also beat the same drum. I mean, would Josh McIntosh ever admit to agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene? I mean, come on, she's a Nazi. She drinks water and breathes air. If it sounds like I'm being dismissive, it's only because I am, and exhausted for that matter. My entire lifetime, video games have been scapegoated as an easy pariah. Truth is, mental health is not an easy issue to discuss. Nor is the fact that the sick cycle of media glorifications of mass shooters to suit their ratings and agendas is what led to many of the copycat killers. It's like the song goes. Nobody wants to admit that we hold just as much responsibility for this as anyone, far more than any first-person shooter game. We're all to blame for feeding into this muckraker cycle, and to fix it, we need to stop paying attention. Even if we grant the argument that the shootings and the violence depicted therein had somewhat of a role in desensitizing the shooters, that would just mean the shooters were incapable of discerning fantasy from reality, which itself is a sign of mental illness. And the fact that so many creative liberties are taken on things that basic firearm owners know inside and out, and the fact that these basic firearm owners mock the murder simulator narrative should be a clue. And let's say we banned video games and the shootings didn't stop. What then? We ban violent movies and TV shows? Violent books? Are we literally gonna have book burnings in the name of the greater good?
How can this be for the greater good? Shut it!
These were the questions asked by the Supreme Court of the United States in the case of Brown versus the Entertainment Merchants Association. California state law, big shocker there, was going to propose a state censorship on video games with violent, obscene content. And to make a long story short, the Supreme Court came to a 7-2 decision in favor of the game industry's right to free speech. And one of the dissenters, Clarence Thomas, would later come down if presented again. He'd vote with throwing the case out entirely because it comes down to the parents, not the state, to regulate what their children consume. If you want to hear the case, I'll put a link in the description, but be warned, it's a long listen. Worth it though. And after the case, one of the two major figures who pushed the legislation, California State Senator Leland Yee, was caught in a sting operation and arrested and convicted with crimes relating to arms trafficking, drug trade, corruption, and racketeering. So let me get this straight. Violent video games are haram, but actual gang violence and working with the triads is A-okay. Video games are clearly not the problems. Nor are books, nor are movies, nor are any form of media. This is something that's 1 part human nature, 4 parts inability to treat mental illness, and 20 parts media glorification. As I said before, mental health is not an easy issue, but it's something we can't ignore. We've seen the results of ignoring it, and we need to be able to have an open and honest dialogue about it. Maybe take steps to actually help those who suffer from it. We used to have hospitals and asylums dedicated to this very thing, aiding those who needed aid and allowing them to cope and integrate into society best they could. For more information on the asylum system and what went wrong with it, I'll link a video in the description on the topic by Aydin to Paladin. Warning, it's another long video, but she covers the issue in depth and detail it deserves. Other than that, we need to stop feeding into the news cycle that glorifies these things for money. Mainstream media is not your friend. That's my own thoughts on the subject. Let me know what you think. This has been the Koopa Man. Game on.